Good morning, everybody, and thank you for attending. This is the second webinar in a series that UniPrint are offering to partners and end users. The idea is more of an informative webinar as opposed to a product pitch. So without too much, just a bit of house rules. Everybody's put to mute. I hope this is acceptable to everybody. However, at the bottom of the GoToWebinar box, you'll find a section called questions. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please just tap your questions into there. I've marked the box as show questions to all, so you should be all seeing the questions come up. I won't type the responses into there just because I can't actually multitask very well and my spelling's appalling. But generally, I'll try and answer them as I go along. However, there is a section at the end for questions and answers. So if I haven't answered them throughout the webinar, I will answer them at the end. So without too much. So first thing I'd like to apologise is that I'm not Catherine Chung as it states, as Catherine Chung is talking. My name is Keith Joseph. I am the EMEA Territory Manager for UniPrint. And as I said, the idea of these is they're short, 30 minutes. We don't want to go into too much detail, but the idea is to make you think and to see how UniPrint could help you within your environment. So, without ado, let's sort of crack going. So today's subject is cost reduction, and cost reduction is quite an emotive subject within businesses because customers are always looking to reduce their costs. They're always looking to drive down acquisition costs, running costs, the usual costs, and that's just part of modern day business that we have today. However, printing is still seen as a problem within organizations. Printing is necessary, but within organizations, you could almost say it's an ugly part of IT. It's very difficult to look after and quantify within a business. And if you actually sort of distill that down into key points, especially with the overhead of cost reduction, you start to understand why it's seen as, first of all, it's not seen as innovative within the business. Print is print is print. As I said, IT sees it as a necessary evil that people want to do. In an ideal world, they'd love to get rid of it. The realities are is that that's never going to happen, and it's never going to happen for a number of reasons, which we'll cover throughout this 30-minute period. We need to split down into the costs. Costs are not normally owned just by the IT department. They're normally spread across the business. So it could be that the printers or the endpoint devices are owned by IT, but the paper is owned by facilities, and the contract to run the printing estate could be owned by finance. So within a larger companies, you end up with a dispersed decision-making operation, and what that really means is that within a lot of organizations, they don't understand the true cost of what their print estate is actually doing to their business. It's also driven predominantly by the users, not by IT. As I stated before, you have this situation where IT would love to get rid of printers. They would love to keep everything within the data center, and they would love to have everything managed solely within their control and their sphere. The realities are, though, within the world is that if you take printing within IT, we've tried to eradicate it, and you look at a lot of organizations, and we have distributors that are trying to go paperless, so they do everything within the cloud, they do everything within shared drives, and they do everything within PDF forms, the rest of it. It makes life very, very simple for them. However, in the wider world, that's not possible. Users need to print stuff. So if you look at law firms, they need to produce contracts. financial firms need to produce pieces of paper that you sign. The reason that is that in certain countries, digital signatures aren't legal. Doctors produce an awful lot of paper, though they are trying to go paperless. The realities are is that that's just not the case. Engineering firms, I mean, you sit there and watch somebody building a building, they don't sit there with an iPad in their back pocket, they sit there with a set of drawings. Drawings are printed. So you end up with this whole thing where users are driving the fact that you need print, and we will always need print. But the interesting thing about users is that they actually don't understand or inclined to control the cost. They just see it as their God-given right to print a piece of paper, so therefore they will print a piece of paper. They don't understand the controls, they don't the costs, and they don't want to control what they're printing. They just want to be able to print. So printing comes with a whole minefield of problems for organizations. But if you actually distill it down into very, very simple taglines, Gartner sort of really tagged it down quite nicely, is that they estimate that within larger organizations is that printing can cost you anything up to 3% of the total revenue of the business. So from a corporate point of view, if you're looking to reduce your costs within the business, and you could actually look at 1% of your business cost reduction, that's quite an achieving. And if you can do that through printing, hey, even better, because you've actually got a tangible you give back to the board about how we're saving you money and how we're doing this and how we're doing that. The interesting thing is that you need to understand how that money is actually being spent within the organization, and you need to understand the barriers and the way that can impact the business. And that's quite often what a lot of organizations don't have control of, because they don't understand, because as I stated before, it is driven by the users, not by the IT departments, but it's also then dispersed across multiple departments when it comes to the responsibility for saving costs, because, as I said, you've got various different people with their fingers in the pie. So the simple question is that, and this is the very, very statement of so print less. And if you look at IT, we've been striving to print less. As I stated earlier, we have a distributor that's their key goal in life. They don't want to print anything at all. Everything's electronic, which is fantastic. And if you can get away with it, then so much so. Unfortunately, I won't have a job, but there we go. But the planet will be safer. The interesting thing, though, is that actually when you really drive down, and this was a infographic done by The Economist, but you can also look at the Finnish Pulp Industry Association, you can look at the Swedish Pulp Industry Association, they're the guys that make paper for the world. We actually are accelerating as a species on the planet, and we're actually producing more and more paper, because there's actually a bigger and bigger demand for paper. And if you look at, this was a study done in 2010, and if you look at the developed world produces or consumes a huge amount. And the interesting thing is it's fairly static up until the point really you get down to about sort of Spain, is that and this is done as a graphic between 40-foot trees that are 6 inches wide and produce about 40 kilos of paper per tree. So if you look at Belgium, Finland, Austria, Germany, they're quite heavy users. We're heavy users within the UK and France, although we do use slightly less. But the interesting demographic is the developing world. So you look at China and India. Now they, if you look to their figures 10, 12 years ago, they would have been sort of where Azerbaijan is and India is at the moment. However, they are accelerating, and if you looked at their papers now, you'd probably find that China is probably the same as the UK, could be even more. India would have accelerated because of the way they do. The Indian figure I find quite interesting, because having worked out there, they're very, very paper heavy. Everything is signed in triplicate. It's a very old-fashioned way of doing business. So therefore, they actually probably use more paper than you realise. Within Britain, though, we're trying to actually reduce the amount of paper. And if you look at the way the government's handling it, as an example, and this is probably true across the whole of Europe, is that they're looking at the actual paper they use. So instead of them using bleach white, nice pieces of paper, they're trying to use recycled grey grungy paper. The interesting thing is that it doesn't actually save them a lot. You know, you could be 10p a ream less, because bleaching paper is not that expensive, but it's their mindset is for every ream that we use, if we save 10, we're using trailer loads and trailer loads of paper. Up in the real world is that's not the real cost within the organisation. It's actually the way they do business. But as I state, you can't get over the fact of the way they do business. They have to do what they do because we have to produce paper and printed documents, because that's the way we work as human beings. If you actually distill how we use paper within the wider world, and you break this down into just the office environment, Kyocera and a number of endpoint manufacturers put together a study, and they looked at how much office workers print. And they came at the conclusion that an average office worker around the world prints out about 10,000 sheets of paper. That's about 45 pages per working day. Now, the interesting thing is that within smaller organisations, you sit there and go, no, we don't. We don't produce. We could only produce 10 pages a day as individuals. You then go to larger organisations and they go, no, we actually produce more, because we've just got this culture of print. It is very much dependent on what industry sector you're in. As I stated earlier, legal, health, finance, local government have a tendency to produce more, not because they want to produce more, it's because they have to. Legislation says they have to do stuff. The law just can't. A classic example would be the fact that if you look at within the cloud business, within the cloud world, you look at the data protection laws, they're different across Europe, so therefore data has different things to deal with. It's the same with print, you know, therefore the documentation to go with it. A doctor has to keep records because he's culpable for actions that happen, and therefore if the records are deleted because somebody's gone and the hard drives have failed, he needs a backup. The law's not fully up to speed on how we back up and keep, and whether they're admissible in court. At the end of the day, they still need to produce paper. I mean, you look at Leveson, which was local government type stuff. Problems within the UK market, within the UK paper industry, newspaper industry here. It causes all sorts of problems for them, because if you looked, they were just bringing in sack barrows and sack barrows of paper, and that was all printed, and that's because they had to be able to show and prove. So printing is not going to go away, so therefore you have to control it. The interesting thing is that when they did the surveys, that out of these 10,000 pages, 6,800 were a lot of them were wasted or unnecessary. And then they did a breakdown of why it was done. So you've almost got 2,000 sheets was printed single side. If you double side it, suddenly you've reduced your printing down by 1,000 sheets. Stuff that you should read on the screen. You make changes of a pen and paper or pen, and then you throw it in the bin, and then you carry on. I do exactly that same thing. Sorry, I'm just sort of everybody complaining. Right, is that better? Hopefully. Bear with me a second. I understand that there's a problem with. Right, hopefully that should have corrected the problem. So, you end up with this situation of stuff that you should read on the screen, you don't read on the screen. You proofread when you shouldn't. Pages get left, and if you did the webinar last week when we were talking about security, that opens up a new thing. A whole different side of the business. The wrong documents to the wrong printers, because that means you're double printing, and unnecessary duplicates because you've hit the print key twice. We all do it. So therefore, it's about when you start to look at the costings, it's about you've almost got to change the way people think, and therefore the way people interact with their print. It's not going to go away, but you can suddenly start making savings within the business. The interesting thing is that you, when you actually start reducing the waste, it actually has a knock-on effect to other parts of the business. And the other parts of the business could be that suddenly you're reducing less managed waste, so therefore you actually have a cost impact to the, or a savings impact on the business by reducing shredding services. Now that can actually be quite expensive. Again, that's not owned by the IT department, that's actually owned by facilities, but it's a known cost. It's a cost that's impacted onto the business because of the printing culture you have within the business. So therefore you need to look at the overall print estate and what the print estate is doing to the organization and what it can and can't do. So if you actually take the print expenditure out, you can break it down into three known areas. You've got your basic known costs, you have your energy, and the cost to IT. So if we cover sort of the basic known costs, the basic known costs are every printer manufacturer or endpoint manufacturer can give you these costs. This is the how much paper, how much it's going to cost you. Most companies have an idea within the organization what it's going to cost. Most have a fair idea. The interesting thing is that the costs vary dependent on the machine. So if you've got a smaller printer, your acquisition costs are going to be less, but then your toner cost could be more. Your service cost could be high. If you then go to a bigger machine, it could be that your acquisition costs are higher, and therefore your toner and ink and service costs are going to be lower per capita for that machine. And you've got to take this into consideration, is that not all machines are equal, but the overall endpoint for the hard costs have a tendency to work out as being fairly simple, because what you offset with one, you lose with another. So therefore, when you're looking at this, it's actually not about what printers you buy. And there's various technologies that they throw out there, like some manufacturers say that we don't use toner anymore, we use wax, and therefore that's going to reduce the cost of the printer itself. That's going to reduce your ink and toner supplies. The interesting thing is your acquisition cost is going to be so much more. So you've got this whole thing that you've got to understand the costs within the business. But let's say most endpoint manufacturers will actually give you those costs, and you can work those out. And they're what most companies work on. They say, oh, it costs us $800 roughly a year. What's that? 500 euro, £450 a year. It's going to cost me to run this printer per user, and therefore it's a known cost within the business. The interesting thing is that the known cost is just the starting point, really. And as we said, there's two other points. And the energy one is quite an interesting one. I use this graphic quite a bit, and it just makes me laugh. But the end of the day is that they are energy vampires. They sit there and they suck energy continuously. So therefore, the more printers you have, and the more printers you have in turn has a tendency to lead on within a standard infrastructure to more print servers, the bigger the draw. And that's just standard physics. If you have more, you will need more. And therefore it will cost you more. So therefore it's about rationalization within the print estate and how you do it, and therefore you have to think of the bigger picture. Newer devices are better. If you look to the printer that came along 10 years ago, it would be sucking in hundreds of watts or thousands of watts of power because of the way a laser printer works. In fact, it's fusing carbon effectively to paper. The interesting thing is the newer devices actually cause other problems, as we saw last week in the webinar, is the fact that they have a tendency to go into standby mode. If a user's not aware that it's going to standby mode or knows how to get out of standby mode, they keep printing and printing and printing and end up producing more prints because they've not realized the printer's in standby and they've got to press the big green button, or they've got to do something on the printer. So there is a knock-on effect that goes either way within the device. So yes, they are greener, but they actually cause you other concerns and issues you need to do. you need to change the way your staff think. They can't just print for print's sake. You've got to sort of manage it and control it, because if you don't, the energy costs will run completely out of control. If you actually do manage to sort of do all three of the above, you are becoming greener as an organisation. Realities are what you're doing is you're actually saving money. And the interesting thing is how much money you can save. So if you look at this example, if you just take a mid-range network printer from HP, it has a draw of about 800 watts of power. Nothing, not a lot in the world these days. There's Hoovers that, vacuum cleaners that take a lot more. And if you look at the steps that the European Union's done to reduce power consumptions within home appliances, they use a lot more power than a printer does. But based on the fact that a printer is on sort of 8 hours per working day, and in a lot of organisations are on 24/7 because people just don't turn them off when they leave the office, that printer will use about 2,336 kilowatts of power per year. That's one printer. So if you actually work that out, HP states that printer will cost you about $150 a year to run, and in some cases will say it costs you a lot less. But what they do is they've cherry-picked the best example. The realities is that if you take that 2,336 kilowatts per year, you can get a cost ranging of anything between $186, so what's that, about €100 a year to run, to nearly 943, which is about just over €500 a year to run. And now you sit there and say, well, actually, how do you come up with those numbers? Because the manufacturer is telling me it's going to cost me about $150 to run. Well, that's because the manufacturers run in an idealistic world, which is when people turn everything off, run the absolute minimum, do the absolute essentials to do. The realities is that you just take the calculations of 800 watts, you calculate that up to your yearly running costs based on 8 hours a day, blah blah blah. You get a range, and the reason you get a range is actually not all countries are equal when it comes to power. You go from one extreme of Dubai, when you've got this situation of it can be anything of 6 US cent per kilowatt hour, right the way down to Denmark, when it's 40 cents. And what this ends up doing, if you do simple calculations, you end up with this huge range. So when you're looking at the cost to your organizations, especially in the IT department, if you're spanning multiple geos, i.e. you've got an operation in Germany, you have an operation in Australia, you have an operation in the UK and Norway, the printers that you buy are not all the same. They're all the same make and model, but the costings are going to be completely different for every geo that you put in these printers in. And you have to factor that into the calculations that you do within your organization. Because if you don't, then you're actually changing the way that you do. And then there's the cost of the IT department. IDC estimate that for every dollar you spend, was it 50 cents you spend or 75 cents you spend on prints, on your hard costs, it can cost you anything up to $9.40 in administration and document management. When it's administration document management, of course, it's actually how you manage to take into consideration the shredding costs, the rest of it. But it's still within an organization that if you can then reduce your printer costs, it has a huge multiplication effect through the organization on what it does and how it does it. They also state the fact that the more equipment you've got, the higher the cost to run. But quite often this is a situation that's pushed out by the endpoint manufacturers. Basically, they want to give you a contract, to give you one printer type, one printer model, a contract that says we'll do page per minute, and that's because they're only interested in selling you toner and ink. That's really what the endpoint manufacturers are interested in doing. But also the knock-on effect is that from an IT perspective, it's always been historical that the more you have, the more it's going to cost you to manage. And we've seen this is that was the old argument before people took up virtualization. Interesting thing is now we've got to this point of virtualization has become the norm, maybe you can use multiple varied equipment within an organization, as long as how you manage that equipment and how you run that equipment is the right way of doing it. We also then see mobile users offering a big challenge for printers, printing solutions within the business. And mobile users can drive the cost because they're an unknown quantity within the business currently, and people have a tendency that they'll do stuff on the train, they'll hit print, wait till they get back, and then they realise they printed it 3 or 4 times. That can drive the cost up. Bring your own device, and VDI further increases it further, and it increases it more to do with a complexity point of view. So the cost of administrating print within an IT environment, within VDI, for example, is that you constantly have to change the image, and you constantly have to update, and you constantly have to change the driver settings and the rest of it. It does have some quite big ramifications. And just to give you an example of that, if you look at, this was just a screenshot I got from off the web for a user in California. This is just within, he's within a hotel, if I remember rightly, but he's got 17 printers he has to deal with. So therefore, from an administration point of view, he has to deal with 17 print queues. From a user point of view, it's a nightmare because he could print any one of those 17 print queues, and his document's going to go all over the place. But really, from an IT perspective, that's 17 print queues he has to manage. There's 17 drivers, there's 17 locations he has to know. And if you look at the way these are all made up, you can't tell where. It doesn't actually say third floor, corner office. It's done within IT speak. We actually know where these printers are. The users don't. So that drives up your IT cost because people spend more time asking, where's this printer? How can I do it? And the first people they phone is the IT department. So if you're looking to achieve practical cost savings, the first thing is that you've got to understand where you can make a savings and how you're going to make those savings. You can't just stop print. So you've got to actually decide where you're going to look to do that. So when you're actually looking with regards to printing, not all printers are equal. That's just a given, is that if you treat the whole estate as the same, you can end up having a lot more problems than you're actually solving. So that's the first thing you need to decide and need to understand. You need to look at each department's needs. So if you take HR and legal, they don't need big fancy colour all singing, all dancing printers. They probably just need black and white printers that do a basic job because they're just sending out contracts to people. But if you look at marketing, they need big colour, they need various different functionalities because of as the arts and crafts department within the business, that's what they need to do. They could be producing adverts, they could be producing this. The same with engineering, they may need A0 plotters that are part of the network, but they don't need big colour printers. So you've got to look at the departmental needs and understand what they do. You need to look at areas where usage is high. This could be a sign of people abusing it, could be a sign of people just printing for printing's sake, but you need to understand why they're printing it and what they're doing. And if you understand that, you can then make changes accordingly. You need to understand the true costs, not just the print, but also the management costs, as well as the other costs within the business. So paper management or waste paper management, does the paper come from a different department? Does that happen? There's various different things that you need to take into consideration. Where is the infrastructure going? Are you heading to more mobile? Are you heading to bring your own device? Are you heading to cloud? Cloud's an interesting one because it really does change the dynamic, because you bring in everything into either on-premise within the data center at your organization or off-premise to a third party. Do you then need to look at print servers? You need to look at this, that, and the other. Then you need to look at remote sites. How do you manage remote sites? How do you do this? How do you do that? Home workers, they're going to have printers at home. How do you manage those printers at home? Who bears the cost of those printers? Quite often that's put on the expense line. I need to buy 4 reams of paper. I took 4 reams of paper home. Who covers the toner costs? Who covers this? It could come under the IT banner. Then you need to document everything. Never forget that IT is responsible for the IT, but it's also responsible for showing the costs and the cost savings that can be made. It's not where the printer lives, it is the IT department's responsibility. So what you need to be able to do is actually to prove to the organisation that you've adopted the best practice that will give you, show you the best cost reductions within that organisation. If you can prove to them that you're saving money because you've implemented X, Y, and Z, it's a lot easier for the business to understand. It also draws in the other departments that are part of the chain of responsibility for the print estate. And as I said before, you need to understand the true costs, not the known costs. If you can't understand the true costs, then you're not going to understand how much your printing is costing you overall. You need to explain. You can explain how you will incorporate the next tranche of technologies that are coming through. I mean, if you'd have had this conversation 5 years ago, you wouldn't have been bringing into the equation mobile compute or cloud or off-premise compute. These technologies marching through, and we're going to see more and more of it with the launch of more and more sophisticated smartphones and more sophisticated tablets. And also the fact is that the footprint of an office these days is so expensive, more people want to work from home. But then how do you manage them working from home? How do you deal with the latency and the rest of it? But more importantly, how do you deal with the basic functionality of what they have to do as part of their business? The easiest way of saving money within an organisation is to demonstrate that you've actually simplified everything. If you can simplify how people do stuff, they have a tendency to be a lot less aggressive or annoyed towards it, and therefore are less inclined to pick the phone up and annoy the IT department with why is this offline, or why is this, or where's my print job gone, because they know, and once they understand it, they know how they're going to drive it forward. And therefore, if they know how they're going to drive it, it's easy. You know, if every car in the world has the same pedal configuration, gearbox configuration, and steering wheel in the same place, people just get in the car and drive. They don't have to phone the manufacturer and go, which pedal goes forward, which pedal brakes me, and which pedal does the clutch. They just know, because they've simplified the whole operation. They've made it uniform. Show how you can report on users and usage. Quite simple. If you can actually prove the fact that what users are doing, you can demonstrate that to the organisation. You can then change habits within the organisation. And then once you actually have a known cost within, you have a known usage in the organisation, you can then charge accordingly interdepartmentally. So how do you deliver this? Well, in order to deliver, it's got to be managed. It needs to be automated. It needs to be hassle-free, and you need to be able to be worry-free within the service. And that's really where UniPrint comes into the equation. So the first thing that we can do is we can change people's habits from the data center, because what we can do is we can actually force people, not by default, but not in an aggressive manner. We can just change certain parameters that they do automatically. And it could be that we change the resolution. So in this case, as you can see, it's 300 dpi, and in this case we've allowed this user that everything he does is automatically double-sided. It doesn't stop the user unpicking the double-sided, but by default he's just going to hit print and it's going to go 300 dpi. In this case, the user is automatically defaulted to color. The realities is that if you're working in HR, you'd set that user to grayscale. Doesn't stop them going to color if they need to, but the realities is that if you're predetermining what people should be doing from a user point of view, and you can manage this at a user level, you can start to get the user to save cost without the user realizing that he's saving costs. The resolution 300, the double-sided. But you're not stopping from the data center point of view any advanced functionality that they may want to use. So you're not stopping them stacking if they need to. So you're not impacting their printing habits. What you're doing is you're trying to maneuver them into a more green, therefore cost-effective manner by using less toner, less paper, therefore less energy. And the reason is that if you look at a printer manufacturer, they'll state the figures. This printer will do 20,000 copies at 300 dpi. if you print at 1200 DPI, it will only do 2,000 copies. The realities is that actually means that you've got to put a new fuser unit, new toner, new this, new that into the unit, therefore your costs go up. So just by reducing the resolution, you're actually getting 4 times as much wear out of a machine, but you're actually getting 4 times as much cost saving from that machine that you've probably seen previously. The Print Pal allows the administrators to assign everything. What this really means is that it's good from a security point of view because you know the right print job is going to the right printer. What it really means is that a user hits print, it comes out the machine that's nearest to him. What it does mean is the fact that he or she is not going to have a problem in relation that it's printed at their last known location. It is always about the user and their current location. So therefore, by making sure that the user is always going to the nearest printer to them, the IT department is assuring that wastage is reduced to a minimum level. And this ensures that, I say, you're always correctly mapped to the right printer for their location. From a user perspective, though, if you actually look at what they do normally, is that if you remember the example where the user had 17 print queues, with UniPrint, we actually reduced that down to 1. He just has a virtual print queue, and then in conjunction with PrintPal and the Profiler, you're actually now picking that up, that there's the print queue, that's all he sees, that's all he ever needs to do. Doesn't need to change anything, doesn't need to change driver habits. The likelihood of him phoning the IT department is vastly reduced because he's not having the possibilities of printing to the wrong location, therefore he's not going to get upset, therefore he's not going to be animated the IT department because everybody blames IT for everything. But what we've not, but we're still allowing him to make the changes he wants to. So not only have we manipulate is the wrong word, but we've set him so he's always going to the most cost-effective manner. We still don't stop him changing it, but we're just making it as simple and as seamless. If he's a mobile user, he's going to different offices, he's doing different things, but he's always getting the same look and feel. It makes it simple. From a VDI point of view, what it means is that you've got one golden image that you build. You just give him a virtual print queue. Once he's got the virtual print queue, he's happy because then he knows wherever he logs in with his VDI environment or his your own device or his mobile, he's always got the same look and feel, same everything. It's about simplification. Simplification makes it easier and reduces your costs. And then we've also got, as we did last week, the reporting side of it. Again, it's about using reporting to change habits within departments. It's about changing the trends within the business. It's about keeping everything going. There's the added advantage, as we spoke about last week, in relation to the increased security that goes with it. But the realities are, it's about if you know what people are printing in different departments, you can either review, you can look at putting more efficient printers in, or you putting less costly printers in, or you're looking at changing printer habits and looking at changing user ways they print and what they do. So therefore, you've got to keep on top of this, and you can do that is by keeping a running track of what people are doing. And the other benefit is that we can archive copies of print jobs. So if there is an element of misuse that's potentially coming through, and misuse is a huge cost to organisation. You know, so-and-so comes in at 8 o'clock in the morning and prints 100 high-quality photos for what they're misusing. The realities is that if you can drive that cost out of the business, that could save you, yes, that might save you 20, 30 quid. But the end of the day is that if you do that over 1,000 or 2,000 employees, that can have a huge savings within the organisation, and you can prove what they're doing. It makes it easier from a HR legal perspective to stop abuse within the organisation. As we covered last week, the interesting thing is that secure pull printing actually aids cost reduction. So not only does it increase your security because of authentication, because you're not printing anything until the user actually calls the printing forward from the printer. Therefore, the likelihood of the user mismanaging jobs and doing everything, anything of sort of problematic everything print is released, because it's all held and it's never physically printed. It's just held as a PDF document within the data center. So therefore, you can actually reduce the cost quite dramatically just by not printing stuff automatically. Hold it until the user calls it. Once the user calls it, it's easy to actually go from there. So within secure pool printing, you see a massive cost reduction just from changing people's habits. So, how do the cost savings really work out? Well, from a management viewpoint, you see the true cost, and therefore you can reduce the true cost of the organization. Not the known cost, the true cost within the organization, because you're suddenly allowing to manage everything from the true cost. UniPrint will actually sort of give you a print reduction or printer usage reduction of 35%. If you looked at the energy costs alone, that could mean anything between $100 to $200 per printer per year. Doesn't sound a lot, but if you've got 200-300 printers, that soon starts to add up. If you then throw duplexing into the equation and changing the user's habits, going from 1200 to 300 DPI, you can see further reductions. Again, we can't quantify what those reductions will be within the organization because we don't know what the true costs are within your organization, but we can help do that because we can change the user's mentality to actually do stuff, because we're getting them to do it automatically without asking them to do it. We're showing the energy savings, as I stated, because we're using your printers less. A lot of large organizations buy carbon offset, so therefore if they can do anything to reduce that, there's the known reduction to the organization from an operational point of view that has nothing to do with printing, but actually has a knock-on effect from your cost reduction to print. We've seen help desks call reduction rates of plus, especially large organizations, because we've simplified the messaging, because we've simplified the way people operate. One print queue, one way of doing it, same look and feel, very, very simple. Do all the work in the back end for them, but do it in a very simplistic manner, as in we know where they are, we know what they do, we know how they're doing it. You reduce the calls. It's where's my print job? I can't log in. I think the print job's gone somewhere. Why can't I print to this printer? All those calls disappear. If you look at the cost per call within your organization, how much does it cost you to run a call? Have you outsourced that to a reseller or to a third-party support company? Are you on a point system? Because every time they make a call, that's reducing your points. Therefore, it's actually increasing your costs. It's about those reductions. And I say it's also about reducing your waste paper management costs. If you're producing less paper from printing, therefore there's going to be less of it. There's going to be less going out the door in relation to the shredder lorries. So therefore you're reducing the possibilities of security breaches. You're reducing the possibility of problems in relation to documentation you don't want out in the real world. But actually what you're doing is you're just reducing the cost. That's the real savings. If you produce a ton of paper a year and you can reduce that to a couple of 100 kilos, there's a massive saving that you're already making. It doesn't impact IT, it impacts the wider organization, but it's a cost saving that reduces your 1 to 3% that Gartner state for your business. So just a quickie for UniPrint. We've been around for nigh on 15 years. We are leaders within the mobile compute printing solution environment. We run a purely channel-orientated model. So we have worldwide distribution of the product, and we have worldwide resellers that can help you. We originally come from a universal print driver, but as you can see, we've moved so far on from that. It really is about mobile compute and actually how we can simplify the mobile compute from a printing standpoint. And this is, as we can see, is where the industry is going. We are going to work more from home, and it's all about management of that. So on that note, if there is any questions, So apart from my microphone being a problem, there's been no questions so far. Now's the time to ask if there's any questions at all. So I take it then from that everybody's sort of covered off. So you can download a 30-day key from our website. We also have an ROI calculator. Albert, yes, I will share these slides. We do make them available because I do actually record these sessions are actually recorded, but I can make them available. But I will send you this slide deck as well. I'll also send. I can also make available. I'll do it through Dropbox probably, and I'll just send you a link to Dropbox. The webinar that I did last week around secure print as well. There will be a third one that we'll do. So yes, we will make them available. We also have an ROI calculator. The interesting thing is that the ROI calculator is only really going off of the known costs. Again, we can't understand your business's true costs because we don't understand as an organization what goes in the background. We can come in and look at that for you, but more importantly, the reseller can actually look at that for you, and we'll be able to do that in a lot more controlled manner. All that is available on the UniPrint website. It's full of information. There's a white paper that goes along with this webinar, funny enough with the same name, cost savings, as is there's a white paper for the secure print that was made last week. So with that, I'd just like to thank you very much for your time. Sorry, I have actually overshot again, and I do apologise. These are only meant to be half an hour, but I just sort of get talking, so I do apologise. If you need to get hold of me, please do so on the details that are attached to your screen. If you're interested in pricing, either please contact our distribution partners if you're a reseller, or contact a reseller that you can again find on the UniPrint website. If you'd like more details, though, please give me a call or give the organisation a call, and we'll go into more details. We're happy to look at things like proof concepts and that, and we can do that in conjunction with our partners. So on that note, again, thank you very much. I hope you found this enjoyable, and again, if there's anything you need, please let me know. Again, thank you very much. Bye-bye.